Hello, and welcome to another installment of Stray Thoughts. Today I'm doing something a little bit different since every episode prior to this has been an excerpt from a personal journal, and though I did not intend it to be such, that's how it evolved for I think about 11 episodes so far. So today I'm making a little departure here and actually recording this intentionally so I get to say hello and welcome properly. Thank you so much for joining. I'm actually interested in circling back for something I said in a recent episode entitled, it's not like I had come up with these titles and write them and know them. I'm sorry. Integrity, choices, ratios, and failure. There you go. Failure in motion. How about that? And look, it's not fatal. Funny. There are actually a couple of points in there, but I want to start by addressing the point one point where I said, get sorted out and get on with it. And this has been a big theme for me. One of the struggles I've had in my life is getting caught in whatever I perceive to be the problem at the moment, and ruminating and walking around and around it until I wear myself out. Oh, the poor darling, she tuckered herself out. Yeah, and I couldn't afford to be tuckered out. It wasn't working too well. So I identified this as one of the key challenges I needed to tackle and transcend. And I don't have a quick how-to right now, but what I can speak to is the virtues of doing that. And I recently came across an old piece of writing from October of 2021. At that time, I sensed I was going through a bit of a pivotal moment in my own personal life. I had sort of a intuitive sense that things were shifting. At that point, it was tectonic. It was sort of subterranean, but substantial enough to move the land masses of my life around. And I was feeling reflective, and I'd been looking at some old pictures, and I came across one, and it struck me. And at that time, I'd been using Instagram to primarily just connect with members of an online community I was part of and am part of. And I was feeling that the people there might understand where I was coming from and what I had to say, and I wanted to say a word about it. And so I wrote the following. If you bear with me, humor me, I'm going to read some old writing. Okay, well, here, let's start here. I posted this photo that's not going to show up right, which was taken on February 21st of 2020. And I entitled it Neither Here Nor There, because that was how I was feeling at the moment that that picture was taken. And the caption read, "Looking ahead to the year we'd planned between deployment and pandemic, a moment of contemplation and loin-girding between the waves of havoc." That's about what it was. I went on in the comments to write a rather long piece. Let's see how quickly I can get through it. I was reflecting on why this old picture stood out to me, and a few things occurred to me as I pondered this. What strikes me most about this photo is the mix of apprehension and determination in my expression. When this picture was taken, I was already alone to man the home front, while my husband was deploying to the Middle East. At that time, I had no idea that I was about to spend 10 months relocated in deep isolation from other adults while the world went into lockdown and caught fire. But from the beginning of 2020, it was patently self-evident that there was no way around but through. And one of my only assets was self-determination. Though sorrow, fatigue, and a bit of dread played against my joy and my drive, somehow my resolve prevailed. Plenty of days I wanted to go slack, curl up with the warm whoopee of despair, and pretend I could afford the luxury of falling into a puddle of woe. But no accomplishment I can claim was ever attributed to this strategy, and there was little to no margin for failure. Life felt like a table flip in slow motion, and I can't say I navigated all of these days with the grace and composure to which I aspire. But I soon remembered that my discipline is one of perseverance. While the aim was to stay atop the waves, the real work was to diminish turnaround time on wipeouts and to increase the speed, skill, and focus with which I got the sand out of my cracks, paddled back out, and caught the next wave. There is no perfect offering, and so I laid up what I had and made it work as best I could for the duration. Now, as I am resurfacing from this odyssey, I find myself in a retrospective state of mind, unpacking what has and hasn't worked to align my efforts with my aims. What I can say is that taking a long view while following a core philosophy has helped my approach, and being willing to train each day with the beginner's mind has helped me to focus on the work at hand and go further with it as I've become less engaged with my opinions and stories about what it seems to be or mean. I have found great clarity in moving through and beyond memory, emotion, and imagination, as well as great power in pushing forward into challenges well beyond my comfort zone. Even knowing full well that I'll likely get trounced for it, I find it far less onerous to charge in than to defend, evade, or shrink from whatever is coming down the pike. I have learned that remaining steadfast in an active and assertive stance significantly helps to shift my physiology, outlook, approach, and outcomes. It also affords enough thrust to break out of prescribed and habitual grooves and to chart new courses. For me, those courses were cut along ridges and valley floors shaped by the glacial forces of values and intent over time, which leveled in their wake so many vestigial influences and illusions. Seeing and accepting reality as it is can be heartbreaking in the sense that it requires we grieve for illusions we've outgrown, but it is also liberating and has helped enhance my capacity for truth and my aptitude in various aspects of life. Through grief, there is joy, and I'm grateful that the experiences of these past couple of years have given me access to this sorrow and pain in such an immediate and meaningful way. There is a wholeness in holding all that we are in conscious and dynamic relation. The ever-shifting pageant of who we are and portray ourselves to be is only enhanced by our ability to know, manage, and integrate our many facets. I'm also profoundly thankful for the resources I did have throughout this. Despite the lack of human contact in real life, I was fortunate to have access to many great thinkers online, from whom I've learned a great deal. I also feel blessed to be part of a lovely online community of creative and unconventional individuals working to tread similar paths along similar lines of thinking through their own unique struggles. It's a great comfort to me to know those who come out to share their beauty, strength, and journeys with others through these difficult and disorienting times, and my hope is that we have all garnered far more than we have lost, and that most of what we have lost was shed for good cause. The piece I'd like to highlight here is the part that says, while the aim was to stay atop the waves, the real work was to diminish turnaround time on wipeouts and to increase the speed, skill, and focus with which I got the sand out of my cracks, paddled back out, and caught the next wave. This idea of quick turnaround clearly goes back at least that far, and I've been working to develop that, I think, since before then, and I continue that work today. And the virtue of that is another point I was hoping to get into here. Time for notes. I was playing with the idea of what I'm now terming life budget, because life is a finite resource. We only have so much time, energy, and attention to give to anything. Out of all the myriad things in this world we can choose to focus on, we only have so much to give to it. And I feel I'm growing ever more miserly with that over time, because I'm more acutely aware of the urgency of the moment before me and how fleeting it is and how much potential exists within it and how much waste I leave in my wake by ignoring that truth. And I feel like I've come to a place where no, I don't have it written down on a nice neat table with figures outlining where I spend my energy, and maybe that's an interesting exercise. But we all know we budget our time and our energy and our attention in one way or another, whether we're very conscious and maybe thorough enough to sit down and write it down like that, or we're sloppy and mindless and we just sort of let the resources fall out of our pockets as we go. I think that I've become more aware of that. I've become more aware of working against waste, and that, yeah, I feel a little more miserly about where I put my energy because there's only so much to go around. And the more I focus on the problems, the more I worry myself about things that haven't happened or are long since passed or are simply beyond my control, the more I'm spending that energy that I could otherwise direct to projects and relationships and experiences that are of much greater value to me. More recently, I was speaking to redemption and failure and saying that part of redemption is being able to embrace our failures, turn and face them, get sorted and get on with it. And this sort of simplified mantra of get sorted and get on with it seems to encapsulate much of what I was trying to express in that longer paragraph. And it helps remind me that when I'm feeling provoked, I feel that someone's inviting me to conflict, I have the option to say no thank you, preserve those resources, and redirect them to something that is of greater value and is more pleasing, more satisfying, more fulfilling or worthwhile. And in choosing to engage in meaningless conflict, I'm I'm basically stealing from the resources I have to do the things I say I'm passionate about, that I'm committed to, and I feel like I'm betraying myself. So I've become a lot more selective about what I do and don't engage with. Now, I'm going to go ahead and reference Ram Dass saying, "You think you're so enlightened, go spend some time with your family." I haven't mastered this yet, but in almost every other domain, and even in that regard, it makes all the difference. It makes so much difference. And sometimes it's a random person coming along trying to make trouble for me, and sometimes it's my very nearest and dearest who are breaking my heart. But I still make choices about how I spend my energy in response to that. And I've come to think, look, if you're not willing to put $50 in the kitty to go and have this conflict, maybe it's not worth it in terms of your life energy. And very quickly you realize, I don't want to spend $50 on that nonsense, or whatever the dollar amount is that you would feel in your own budget. I think for Jeff Bezos that would be a larger dollar amount. For me, $50 would hurt. So I think maybe not so much. And I don't even really have to consciously think it. I've become fluent in this. But starting out, I would say, would this be worth spending $50 or $100 on if that's what it costs to engage in this? And my realization was, if it's not worth the money, it's definitely not worth the time, because you can always make more money. You can't make more time, and we're taking on a certain amount of damage when we do it. To elevate our state to that level for something fruitless, it's just self-harm in another form, really, because I know how my body feels when I'm in conflict, and I don't think that's good for my health. I don't think that's a way I want to live. I don't think I want to live picking up the pieces of that and trying to slowly and painfully get forward because I went deeper into it than maybe I should have. And so, yeah, this concept of get sorted and get on with it has been really helpful to me, and I just wanted to circle back after having said that and elaborate a little bit. And I hope that there's something in there that is of some value to you, that there's some insight, that maybe we all let ourselves off the hook for the times that we're invited to conflict, and even within ourselves we're tempted to fall into rumination and imagination and memory and these forces that are so alluring, and I've lived so subject to their whim. And part of taking myself back and building the relationship with myself is putting boundaries around that. The most important boundaries are the ones we have with ourselves. Everything else is shadow puppetry. It's just you're miming boundaries. You're not really actually having and holding them. Real good boundaries are something that exist within us and need to be practiced there first. And then as we develop that and can see the value in that, we can more reflexively respond to protect that in practice. And that's been an invaluable process for me, because I think about ever less frequently do I encounter the potential for conflict, but when I do, think of all those minutes and hours that are mine. I kept them. I didn't let any circumstance rob me of those moments. And it didn't cost me anything on turnaround. Turnaround is so key, because for a long time I would really get mired in it, and I would have such a struggle to break back out of that gravitational pull. It took so much rocket fuel to get me back up to where I was floating in the peaceful void of space without those troubles pulling me down. And now I have all that energy for other things, and I need it. I'm not a high energy person. I need what energy I can save. So it's been wonderful to fill the coffers with what I might have otherwise wasted. And I hope this helps you to do the same. All right. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to have you along. Thank you so much for coming with me on another flight of fancy here, and my first intentional episode of Stray Thoughts. All right. Well, thank you again. I wish you all the best.